for Fabulous Foods with Victoria Fabbo. I'm Victoria Fabbo, your local registered dietitian. A little bit about myself. I have my associates in baking and pastry, my bachelor's in culinary nutrition from Johnson & Wales University, and I also have my master's in public health from UMass Lowell, and I'm a dietitian from there. Today we're going to be cooking a little bit of our brujol. Today we're going to do it with an herb butter with spinach and mushrooms. We're going to accompany that with some Brussels sprouts, asparagus, and potatoes. So I made a compound butter earlier. It has a lot of different herbs in it. So I have butter here on the stove. I have rosemary, marjoram, sage, thyme, basil and parsley in here as well. So when I make a compound butter, I have about a pound of butter here now. There's also garlic and onion powder in there. And this is going to be our base rub for our brujol. Give that a nice stir. Okay. So you can cook that on the stove for up to 10-15 minutes, not too much longer. You don't want it to necessarily brown right in here because it's going to be cooked again in the oven. All right, so we'll just let that sit. All right, so over here I have some compound butter that I made earlier, and we're going to make our stuffing for our brujol. So first I'm going to add our frozen spinach. So why did I choose to use frozen spinach? It was just more accessible for me, especially if you're on a budget. It's easier right there. Or you can get fresh if you'd like, if you rather that. So we're going to put the spinach in. And then we also have mushrooms. So you can see that there's some liquid on the bottom. I have washed my mushrooms 3 times now. I like to let them soak in water, drain it. On the 3rd time, I'll keep the water for a little bit later for our moisture for our brujol. And I'll show you how to do that. So you can hear that sizzling nicely. So I'm going to take the mushrooms and put them on the sides. I'm going to let that sit tight and cook away. All right, let's go over here to the meat. Now is our fun part. We're going to cut our meat. We're going to butterfly it. When you have meat, you always want to make sure you're cutting with the grain, not against it, okay? It makes it for a tougher chew. We're going to cut this so that we can wrap it up. So we're going to show you how. So you can see here how the meat is. Also, just like a little bit, anything white you might see in meat, that's fat, right? That's cartilage. So you can choose to get a leaner protein if you'd like, or you can get one with more fat and you'll know it'll be a little juicier later. As you can see on the top part here, I have taken off most of the fat. This is just the silver skin left, so we'll use that when we're searing it later. Okay, so think about your fingers and how big you want it. Sometimes that's a good guiding point. So I just want to have it like a finger thick. And your fingers, it all depends on what your size of your finger is, but that's my goal for this today. All right. So, like I said, we're just going to cut it for 1 pinky size. And you want to go for a back and forth motion to slide and glide it. And don't be afraid of the meat. It knows when you're frightened. So nice back and forth motions. Okay. How are we doing on size? And keep following the trace. Okay. So that's one layer of it. So we want to keep going. So what we're going to have to do is keep going on the side. So now that we have it almost like a book, like a butterfly shape, what they like to call it, we're going to keep cutting it so that we get it nice and thin. So we want to keep as much as we can the same length. Also, you can have your local butcher shop do this for you. It makes the day a lot easier. All right, so let's go check on how our spinach and mushroom's doing. First, I'm gonna wash my hands. So there is a lot of liquid here, like I said, from the spinach. So we wanna try to take that out as much as we can. I did higher up the heat to a high. You can lower down the heat. You don't want it to boil too much as the water evaporates. Okay, now I'm gonna add a little bit of salt. You can use any salt that you have in the house. Salt, any though it may be different colors, has the same salt content, same sodium content. So it doesn't matter which salt you use. The only thing that differs is the way it's processed. So some salts may be a bit coarser, some may be finer. So choose whatever you have in the house. My mom makes a really great perjol. She always uses spinach, mushrooms, and of course, any herbs you add is always great. If you want more rosemary, thyme, parsley, whatever you want to use, feel free to add it. We always love a lot of rosemary in my house, so we'll be using that, especially with our compound butter rub. And this is a base too. If you want cream of spinach to go on the side instead of inside of the meat, you could have spinach and mushrooms cooked like this with compound butter, and then you can get cream and add it, and then you'll have cream of spinach too if you wanted. Spinach is a vegetable, the vegetable that has iron, folic acid, vitamin K, so it really has a lot of great benefits to it. Mushroom has vitamin D, and again, like the winter blues, we need to eat a bunch of mushrooms to help prevent the winter blues, but it is a great bonus to add when you're cooking. With this mixture too, with the spinach and mushrooms, if you have any store-bought pizza dough, you could use this as well. Have the store-bought pizza dough, add this filling in, add cheese, of course, any kind you like, and then you have some pizza or calzone. When you have fresh spinach, you have to use a lot more volume because it shrinks a lot more. With frozen spinach, it doesn't shrink as much, but because of the extra water that is in there, sometimes it takes longer to take out. So you can have it the night before in the fridge in a strainer with the bowl underneath so the liquid has a place to go. Okay, so our spinach and mushroom mixture is just about done. Not as much water in there, so that's great. We'll bring it over to our meat and we'll roll it up. That looks pretty. So that's our spinach and mushroom. And like I said earlier, I made a compound butter and I put it in the fridge. That's why it's all clumped together so nicely now. We can give that a bit of a mix. Seems like the herbs are all a little bit on the bottom. Okay. Okay, here's our meat, spinach and mushroom mixture. It will be a bit hot, so if you want it to cool off first, feel free to do that. You want the mixture to be spread out. So let's pick one side and we'll roll with it. All right, let's pick with our top side down first. Let me stuff a little bit more into it. Okay. We want this part with the silver skin on top. This is where it'd be great if you have a helper, so you have 2 hands, or 4 hands rather. So it looks nice and pretty. We want to go ahead and wrap it on the bottom. If you can get green juice on you, it's okay. It can happen. We want to keep it as tight as we can too. Okay, I'm gonna wash my hands and I'm gonna rinse off our cast iron. Hey guys, so I wanna just make sure we are making our meat. It's not really a pot roast, it's more of an oven roast. Perjol is what my family likes to call or Italians, when something's cut out flat and has stuffing in it and rolled up. Sometimes that's made with a red sauce today, but I did spinach and mushroom. Like I said, if you do have a friend, it can make the twining a lot easier. So today might not look the perfect, but it will hold it together nicely, I hope. So on our cast iron here, we have our compound butter that we made. Feel free to add a little bit more if you want. And you want to hear that sizzling and cracking sound. That's going to give us a really nice sear on our top brown, okay? All right. Again, this has rosemary, garlic powder, thyme. We want it nice and pretty. So we're going to go ahead and grab the meat and flip it in on the top side down. Nice. You want to hear that noise. We want to get it nice and crispy and brown. Okay, so as a sear, something that you may like to do with an oven mitt, you want to dip the pan a little bit so you have some oil or butter on the side, and so you want to put that right on top, just so we can make sure it's staying moist as it's being seared. Okay, let's give that a little bit to sear. Let's check it out. Let's see if you can see it on this angle. Not quite brown yet. And you might want to gently lift up each little side just so the pan doesn't stick, and so you can make sure new butter gets in there. Patience is a virtue. Making sure the sear is nice and brown all the way around the meat is really desired, so it may take a couple of minutes. Don't walk away, and make sure that nobody else distracts you so you can pay attention. You can see that it's coming together now in a brown. So we can go ahead and flip it to the other side. You may want to use 2 pairs of tongs and an oven mitt or whatever you have, and that's okay. Okay. Now if you wanted to, you could brown this a little bit more, depending on how much of a sear you'd like. And we'll let that continue to sear. I am a registered dietitian, but sometimes when you're making something like a roast like this, you do want some butter, so you get nice flavor, nice texture. And when you are making a compound butter, you can use olive oil with the butter as well, or just using oil, whichever you'd like. So I'm just lifting it up to get some more butter underneath it. Be mindful of the steam as well. Lower down the heat just a tad. So remember when I said to keep your mushroom water? If you want to make sure it's nice and moist throughout the cooking process, you can add some water, wine, or if you have any sort of broth, bone broth, meat broth. Today we're going to use mushroom broth. All right, just enough to cover the pan. So this is braising now. Now we're going to pop this in the oven. You can cook it at 325 for 20 minutes per pound, or at 350 for about 15 minutes per pound, but just be mindful of your oven. So now we're going to go ahead and work on our Brussels sprouts, asparagus, and potatoes. First, I'm going to put on some boiling pot of water on for our asparagus to boil. I only have it about, I don't know, a 1/4 way full of water, and that's how we're going to cook our asparagus first. So lid on and let that come to a boil. Okay, while our meat is in the oven, we'll go ahead and prep our Brussels sprouts and potatoes. So first, we're going to go ahead and cut up some onion and garlic to be with it. Always being mindful of how your fingers are, and a bear claw if you can. And then vertically down. and then one more time horizontally across. In this pan, I'm just going to add a little bit of oil on the bottom, olive oil. Go ahead and add your onions. I'm going to take a few cloves off of our garlic. We're just going to give this a rough chop. We want it nice and minced. I like my garlic very minced and small because the more surface area, the more flavor is being let out. So I always like to do it as small as I can. Our onion and garlic I just put off to the side. Our water is boiled for our asparagus. So I'm just going to go ahead and cut off the ends of the asparagus. All right. We're going to bring our asparagus over here so we can cook it. Watch out for the steam. And you want your best for it to be all facing the same way. So you could do this a couple different ways if you want. The way we like to do it at my house, we let the asparagus cook for about 5 to 6 minutes or until fork tender, depending on how fast it's boiling or not. Or you could blanch the asparagus. Blanching is when you have boiling water and you add in the vegetable for about less than a minute, really. You just want to give it that quick blanching time in the water and then take it right out and rinse it under cold water. And that's so you can keep the nice crispiness and the flavor and the color vibrant. So I'm going to just set a timer for 5 minutes and we'll let that go. So we have our tricolor potatoes, purple, raspberry, regular ones. I just rinse them off and then I put them on in. You can cut them in half if you'd like. So if you want to, you can cut them down the middle and then toss them right in. Okay, so we have our Brussels sprouts we're going to cut off next. I like to cut off the bottoms first. Throw that in the compost. Chop these up real quick. And if you want to do the chopping, and then if you want to get the kids involved, and you can have them peel off the outer layer. All right, there's our timer for our asparagus to take out. Okay, and you can use a fork too, just to test it. So those are great. I'm gonna bring the pot over to the sink, and I will drain them. So we have our Brussels sprouts, potatoes, onions, and garlic in here. Here I have olive oil. Olive oil is a monounsaturated fat. It's one of our healthier, leaner fats. Then I have our compound butter, which has butter, which is a saturated fat, not as great for our cholesterol and heart health, but the combination of olive oil in there as well. So with that said, you can use olive oil with same herbs that I put in our compound butter: rosemary, thyme, sage, marjoram, garlic powder, onion powder. Can never forget those, right? So again, so if you're thinking about your heart health, we're going to use some extra virgin olive oil. Okay. And then we're going to add in our spices. And you can do this with or without salt, depending on what diet you need to be mindful of. If I put enough garlic powder and herbs in there, I feel like I don't necessarily need the salt. I will add a dash of salt to bring the taste all together, of course. So you can wrap this with foil and then bake it, or you can bake it now and then wrap it with foil later. It's up to you and your choice. The difference would be, that I've noticed, is if I put it in the oven without the foil on, it's going to brown quicker, and then I'll put the foil on so it can cook evenly better. Or if you want it to cook evenly first and then take the foil off and then brown it that way, you can do that as well. Sometimes with doing that method, it might not be as crispy and crunchy as you might want it to, so that's why I go ahead and I cook it first without the foil sometimes. Again, depends on what you're going for. Watch out for the steam when you are opening up the oven. And this opportunity, we can take out the meat and we can see how it's doing, and we can lather it up with some butter more if we want, or scoop in the butter that we have. So I'm just gonna go ahead and braise it using a spoon to pour the liquid over the meat. Keep it nice and tender. And if you're doing a turkey for Thanksgiving or Christmas, this is what I also recommend always too. Any of the fluid on the bottom, you know, trying to put it on top of the meat so it locks and seals in the flavor. Okay. It smells so good. You can smell the fresh herbs, the rosemary and thyme. Oh, so yum. Put it back in. Again, be careful of the steam in the oven. Okay, so our Brussels sprouts and potatoes are in the oven. Make sure to stir them as often as you'd like, maybe every 10 to 15 minutes. You can rotate the pan as well, and we'll just let that cook for now for about 40 minutes to an hour. Okay, so while our meat and potato and Brussels sprouts are cooking, we're gonna dress our asparagus. So we took them out of the refrigerator. The asparagus has been chilling. I chopped up some fresh garlic and I put that on. I'm gonna add some parsley, basil, and salt. Okay. All right, so I'm gonna put ahead some balsamic vinegar. I'm gonna add some olive oil. Give that a nice toss. We really enjoy this at my house in the winter and the summer, so you can have it all year round. And if you let that sit and let the vinegar marinate the asparagus, that will taste great with the garlic. Okay, so there we go. We got our one side for our main dish. We have asparagus. Okay, so we're gonna take out the meat and let it sit for about 20 minutes. She looks pretty. Okay, so our potatoes and Brussels sprouts are cooked. I just like them a bit more crispy. So I higher the temperature and I am on it a broil right now so that they can little crisp up a bit. When you are cooking the meat, you can do this every 20 minutes where you just glaze the meat over. And the internal temperature, if you want it medium rare, could be a 125, 135. Meat you want cooked to at least 145 when you are cooking, but depending on how you like your meat done. We're just gonna plate our asparagus. What's a serving size too? A serving size is about a half a cup of vegetable. So you want to make sure you have enough. We're also going to be adding some Brussels sprouts as well. Sometimes with the butcher twine it can be a bit of a struggle, but as long as at the end of the day it's cooked to the right temperature and it's nice and juicy, then I think it's a job well done. We'll let that sit for 20 minutes and then we'll come back and we'll cut it again. Okay, our Brussels sprouts are out of the oven. We broiled them so they're get nice and crispy. Just be mindful of how long they're in there and if you choose to walk away. So we have our potatoes, we have Brussels sprouts, onion, garlic in here. They look pretty. Okay, great. I'm gonna push this off to the side. I put the foil on top of the meat right when I took it out so that they would lock in the moistures and keep the meat nice and juicy. Push that to the side. All right, she looks pretty. Now the twine can come off, the butcher twine. Okay. How did we do? Let's see. Put this out of the way. Okay. All right, I might not have been as happy with my twine job as I could have. I'll get better. But you can see how pretty it still came together, the meat with the spinach and mushrooms. Okay, let me push this off to the side and we can take a look at our plate. Here is a nice winter meal. We have our oven roast with spinach and mushrooms. We have our purple and we have our potatoes and Brussels sprouts and asparagus, and I really hope you can enjoy this with your family. Okay, I'm gonna add our au jus to our beef. Keep it nice and moist. And remember, if you can, if you have time, to continue to glaze your meat as possible. Okay. Thanks for joining me on Fabulous Foods with Victoria Fabbo. I really hope you enjoyed this meal with your family. Have a great weekend.